Genetically, we all have different types of appetite. The biggest genes that drive weight gain are related to our central nervous
What's
system.
worse, lack of sleep or a very sedentary lifestyle for longevity?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would say, well, oh man, I don't know.
And welcome to another episode of IG Life with Astrid, your APD, your dietitian with T, no C. And today we are joined by Dr. Spencer Nadolsky. I'm very excited to have him on because he is a super great personality, and I think we're going to have a really good time talking about overrated, all things health, nutrition, and see what his answers are on these particular topics. So let's get him on. And I know many of you know him quite well, but for those who don't know him, we'll get to know him a little bit better. Hey, Spencer, how are you?
What's up? I'm in my car because I actually had to bring my kids in to get their flu vaccines. So it was a kind of a, anyway, my wife called and was like, can you get him in? I'm like, I'm doing this live at 3:30. She's like, bring him in. I was like, all right, fine. So I'm in the car. So anyway,
That's all right.
it's fine as long as
Awesome.
everybody can hear me.
No, it's awesome. I am very appreciative of your time to coming into this IG Live, because I've been trying to get you on for a while and finally could get you. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah, well, you're on the opposite side of the world, so your schedule is opposite from mine. So it's fine. It works out. We made it work.
Yes, it was good, the actual change of time, daylight savings,
Yep.
because it made it a little bit earlier for you, but later for me. So it kind of worked out really well. Otherwise, it would have been like 5:30 a.m. and now I can't work up this day.
You just need a little bump, that's all. All right.
Well, this IG Live is going to be just very dynamic, a little bit different formats to the general questions you get. Like, they can be so tiring and very long. So because this is a different format, the idea of these questions is like, I kind of give you a statement, particularly for the first section that is going to be rapid Q&A, underrated, overrated, around terms or things of nutrition and health. And you basically tell, your answer would be, is overrated or is underrated, and why you select that answer.
All right.
All right, you ready?
Sure.
Okay, so the first one is sodium intake for general population. Is that overrated or underrated?
I would say so. Yeah. Okay. It's. I could get in some arguments. I would say, in the grand scheme of things, overrated. Overrated.
Okay, what do
But
you think?
but it's still important. But I would say overrated compared to other things. Yeah.
Okay, and what about athletes or active people in sodium intake, under or overrated?
Could go either. I would say probably overrated, and that is simply because I would say there have been some athletes that come to me. They're like, I'm watching my sodium intake. I'm like, please don't focus on that right now. Anyway, so I'd say still overrated.
Okay, is there any particular reason you just sort of tending to say that answer?
Because I think most of us, so athletes specifically, unless they're going like a low sodium diet, I think we get enough from all the things that we eat. I do think for general population, it's a very important population health thing. But if we move people to more whole, unprocessed foods, we automatically start lowering the sodium anyway. And I think that should be the focus, as opposed to not putting salt on our foods or looking at labels. We should be eating foods that don't have labels in the first place. So I would say that would be the goal, and you could kill many more birds with one stone. So
Okay. Next, bariatric surgery in morbid obesity. Overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Okay. Yeah. Why do you think? Why is that?
I'm not a surgeon, but it's absolutely by far the most powerful tool we have for obesity. The thing is, obviously it's an extreme measure. So, but I think there are a lot of people that are still afraid of it. It's still stigmatized, like it's just a crutch. No, it's just our most powerful tool we have. So I would say it's underrated. And I think even in doctors' minds, we need to refer more when we're just not cutting it, getting people to lose with lifestyle or even medicines in my case.
And I've seen how dramatic can be the benefit and the impact on their quality of life, their lifestyle is really amazing, especially when we look at everything they are going through when they are morbidly obese, a lot of difficulties moving around, interacting with the world, feeling well. Like there's so many things that can go better when they utilize that tool, especially if everything else have been tried and has failed pretty much.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, next one. Creatine used for cognition. Under or overrated?
Probably overrated. I mean, like, I think you'll probably start seeing small effects. Oops, there's a helicopter going over. I think you'll see small effects with lots of things with creatine, but like, if you're looking for a big jump in cognition and whatever, you're not going to get it from creatine.
Okay. Management of blood sugar levels throughout the day. Overrated or underrated?
If you have type 2 diabetes, I would say it's underrated. If you don't have type 2 diabetes, it would be overrated.
Okay. I asked this question because you hear a lot of people outside that from like the type 2 diabetes world that they say like if you don't have a really good management of your blood sugar levels throughout the day, you're at higher risk of increasing your cortisol and getting you very, very stressed out, or it could affect your mood and things like that. So do you think that is that relevant, or is still being
Yeah, I think the underlying pathology of like insulin resistance is underrated, but the blood sugar management, by changing what we eat in a healthy population, our bodies do such a good job at regulating it. Unless you're eating just a bunch of crap and just really like exacerbating probably the underlying pathology, I don't think it's an issue. Like if you're eating mostly whole foods, it just doesn't matter. You switch from eating bananas to blueberries, it's not going to matter in a healthy person. Type 2 diabetes person, potentially, yeah.
Okay. When we think about adrenal fatigue, overrated or underrated?
Yeah. Overrated, and it's just if people shouldn't even. I wish people would forget that term. So it's just not even a real diagnosis. So definitely overrated.
Awesome. So what do you think that is so overused, that term?
A ton of people feel like crap, and so the deal is people are stressed, are not getting good sleep. They're watching this Instagram live in the middle of the night when they should be sleeping, that type of thing. They're watching Netflix. They're eating like crap. They're not working out, and they're fatigued. So then you get someone that comes along going, oh, yeah, I got the answer. It's your adrenal glands that aren't working properly. Well, you can make up whatever you want, but it turns out that doesn't actually happen. So people do feel fatigued. It's just that making up a fake disease and then selling people supplements is not the answer. So ideally, you would find the underlying issue of what's causing the fatigue, and a lot of time it's their lifestyle. I've found other pathology, like some people have thyroid issues. Sleep apnea is a big one that I see, and sometimes once in a while anemia and some other weird autoimmune things pop up that like those things take a while to diagnose, but the other normal things that go undiagnosed when they get told they have this fake disease and given ashwagandha or rhodiola, some licorice or whatever, vitamin C and anything like that. So yeah, people feel like crap all the time, and it's our lifestyles.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. And I think part of the reason why this term might be overused as well is like this chronic stress, and they assume that a very chronic stress, like a very stressful lifestyle, is associated with like a higher levels of adrenal fatigue. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Right. So what they're saying is that you stress your bodies, and our adrenal glands make cortisol, one of these hormones that's helpful in stress situations. And if you do that enough, then your adrenal glands burn out, and that's not actually what happens. There is something that might occur where there's a disruption between the communication between your brain and your adrenal glands, and that starts to get a little bit more scientifically accurate, where they call it hypothalamic pituitary axis dysfunction. But even still, the underlying issue is the lifestyle that you have to fix. So yeah, it's just, so there are people that have adrenal insufficiency, and it's caused by multiple. You can have an autoimmune thing where it attacks your adrenal glands. Then that's a real issue. Then you need to get cortisol. You have to actually take steroids when you get stressed out. Otherwise, you can die, and you have to have them every single day. So anyway, there's adrenal insufficiency, but that's different from this adrenal fatigue, which is not even a real thing, where it's underlying lifestyle issues.
I agree. Awesome. Okay, leaky gut. Do you think is that a term that is way overrated or is underrated?
So so I'll say overrated in terms of, it's again it's not a real diagnosis. However, people can have increased intestinal permeability, which may or may not be increasing the risk of certain chronic diseases. And I think I think there's probably things in our environment that are disrupting our intestinal permeability that I think we need to somehow improve. But intestinal permeability isn't a clinical outcome we look at in terms of clinical outcomes. So like the way they can measure this thing and a few other things. And it's like, well, what we care about is the true outcome. Is someone feeling better, and is their disease improving? I don't care about intestinal permeability as a clinical outcome. I care about the end mark of whatever disease or whatever condition that they have. So anyway, I would say overrated, but it's something that we should look at for underlying potential pathology for future studies. Right now it's like we don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, and I think I brought it up just because there is so many people around saying that they have leaky gut and this or that causes leaky gut, and they don't even know what that means.
Right.
So it's like an overused term that a lot of people don't know the meaning of it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know, having just excess adipose tissue viscerally can increase your intestinal permeability. Well, instead of taking supplements to fix the permeability, let's try to lose that visceral fat and that type of thing. So again, it comes down to what's the underlying cause here.
Yep. Starvation mode.
Oh yeah.
Overrated or underrated?
Overrated. I just made a post about it yesterday, but first you got to define what starvation mode even means. Like, I don't know. What most of my patients and followers come to me is that they think that they're eating too little, and that's the reason they can't lose weight. And in fact, they might be gaining weight because they're eating too little, and that doesn't happen. In fact, I was going back and forth with somebody in the comment sections about, like, well, what if your leptin goes down, then you're going to start storing body fat. And it's like, no. If you go to starvation camps, like places where people are truly starving, they are not gaining weight. I can promise you that. So it's an overrated term. It doesn't. If you want to say somebody's starving and they're so hungry, they're binge eating and they are miserable, then let's go with that. But I hate the term because it doesn't mean anything.
There is another term that is really often like kind of interchange with that one, which is metabolic damage. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I would call it metabolic adaptations. So like, I know Lane, he always feels bad for even using that term, but yeah, metabolic adaptation. So when you lose weight, your metabolism goes down no matter what, because our tissue is metabolically active, even fat tissue. So any type of diet, any weight loss will reduce our metabolic rate. Now, the adaptation or adaptive thermogenesis, there may be a further droppage in our metabolism basal metabolic rate, further than what would be expected, generally in the 5 to 10% range. So if you were supposed to be burning 2,000 calories after weight loss, instead you're now burning something like 1,800 to 1,900 calories basal metabolic rate. But even still, after long periods of maintenance, it's thought that is minimized in the long term. Anyway, that's the thought. So, But that's truly real. That does happen, and I wouldn't equate that with starvation mode. But I think some people misinterpret that.
No, no, I absolutely agree. But I think these terms are quite often utilized without really knowing, oh, well, I'm not losing weight. I probably have I have a metabolic damage.
Yeah.
And probably you can think about chronic dieting. People have been doing, like this year, you're dieting for quite a long time, and they actually go so low in calories. I struggle to lose weight further. And we sort of sometimes, when we look at everything and we've tried lots of different strategies and they still struggling to lose weight, you sort of implement that slow reverse diet. But I guess my point on bringing this up is because the people think that metabolic damage on its own can be a real thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so metabolic damage, meaning like a permanent decrease in their metabolic rate. I would say no. The one thing that I would say is, I made a post about hypothalamic amen or relative energy deficiency syndrome, where women and guys can have this too. But someone asked, what is metabolic damage? So the metabolic damage, the way it's colloquial defined, would be when you're dieting, your metabolism goes down and stays lower, and you can't get it back up no matter what, just from too much dieting. Even if you stop dieting and regain your weight, people are like, oh no, your metabolism. I've never seen that. When people stop dieting and go to maintenance and regain their weight, generally goes up. Now there was a few big time outliers in the Biggest Loser cohort, and that's rarely ever seen, where people started regaining some weight and their metabolism stayed lower, but it rarely ever seen.
What I've seen is that it is quite correlated with the amount of lean body mass you tend to lose, and how long it takes you to regain that lean body mass back to where it was before you lost the weight. It's not necessarily so much about the fat, but it's more about that lean body mass that was lost. So I think once you sort of have regained that lean body mass somehow by training or rebuilding, there seems to be sort of like the metabolic rate starts to catch up. I don't know. It is something that I've read, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. So one thought is, if you retain all your lean body mass as you're dieting, you won't have this. But it's even in still, just due to dieting and losing fat, there's still some of that adaptation. I think it's, in terms of obesity management, it's a very small component, your basal metabolic rate, but there's probably something to it. The thing is, the most successful people, the people that lose the most weight and keep it off, they're the ones with the most adaptations, probably because they're keeping it off the longest, and it's the body's way of compensating in different ways. But yeah, it's an interest. They keep studying it. I don't know. Appetite is where I like to focus on, because that has the biggest bang for the buck.
Yep. When we think about rapid weight loss in obese population, do you think is that overrated or underrated?
I would say underrated in certain circumstances. The reason is because, hey, slow and steady is awesome. I just made a post today about losing 5 to 10% of your weight, and that's like where you see the most health benefit. The thing is, the people that lose the most amount of weight in the first 1 to 2 months, they're in a plan, they're the ones that tend to be the most successful overall. Now the problem is that because they're the ones that actually stuck to the plan? These are things that nobody really knows. Like, the people that lose the weight the fastest in studies, they do the best in the long run, right? So, but is it because they're the ones that the people that didn't lose the weight, they just didn't actually stick to it, or didn't even do it? Hard to know. I would just say, don't be afraid of rapid weight loss if you have a lot of weight to lose. If it happens, it happens. If you shoot for it, it doesn't happen, but you're still working. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it. I would just say the whole slow and steady wins the race is not necessarily true. Both ways can work.
I guess it just depends on the context of the person, whether the person has a background with like eating disorders or something like that, when you have to consider, well, probably this way or this approach is not the right
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. Somebody with an eating disorder history, I would be very careful. And one of the myths out there is that people with eating disorders can't lose weight. That's not necessarily true. It's person by person and depends on the method. But yeah, I would be very careful about like, oh yeah, you have a history of eating disorders. Let's restrict your calories and try to get you to focus on the weight loss drop. You know what I mean? We want to take the focus off the weight. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, so find different strategies that can be helpful, more weight neutral, or perhaps just trying to just incorporate more physical activity, modify some behaviors that might sort of by default get the person in a calorie deficit and therefore lose weight. It can be a little bit trickier, but you get that person started, and then once they start seeing some of these benefits and changes, then they can get motivated to perhaps implement new strategies. It just depends on the person, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
All right, next one is the word or the term calorie deficit as term for weight loss. Do you think is that overused, underused?
Yeah, well, yeah, it kind of depends. If you're looking at like the whole bro weight loss world, I would say probably overrated. But if you're looking in the general population who doesn't understand weight loss, I would say underrated.
Okay. Hormonal reset.
Overrated. Yeah. It's a nebulous term. It doesn't really mean anything.
Can you actually detox when you have a high levels of estrogen, or when you think these female clients, because I hear this word a lot, and I think probably you might have a little bit of extra thoughts about whether that is overused term or not.
Yeah, overuse. They say estrogen dominance and all this stuff, and it's like, what do you mean detox? What are you going to do? So what? Like, you're going to get rid of the endocrine disrupting compounds and eat a few different foods that may help with the metabolism of your estrogen? Well, adipose tissue has aromatase in it, and more adipose tissue means more estrogen. So maybe if we get somebody to lose fat, we can decrease the amount of estrogen in their body. And even still, the whole estrogen dominance, it's another fake term. It's not even real. It's not an established diagnosis. So
Yeah. When we think about sugar addiction, the term, is that overrated or underrated?
I would say overrated. I would say that food can have addictive like properties though, and I would say not to ignore that. Some people are like, no, there's no such thing as food addiction. It's like, whatever you want to call it, some people have a propensity to go towards certain foods, and it's not just all psychological. There's physiological reasons for that, and psychological, of course. And that's why I don't think we should be completely naysaying this idea of food addiction. I would say that we should just understand the context and nuance of it, because what some people say, if somebody says they're food addicted, and you're like, yes, you're addicted to that, it takes away the power of them trying to make a choice and free will. But then saying they're not, also you're trying to say like, no, there's nothing to it. Whereas the people probably have some sort of drivers towards some of those foods. So I would just understand.
Yeah, there is a huge amount of science around the neuroscience around all these neurotransmitters that are sort of triggered by highly palatable foods, and how that triggers dopamine and adrenaline and all of those things. So, you good?
Yeah, there was a bee in the car. I was like, get this thing
Oh,
out.
okay. All right. Next one is standing desks or treadmill under the desk or weighted vests. Underrated or overrated?
I would say probably overrated. I don't know. It's good to get up and walk and stuff like that. I'm just not so sure those are going to move the needle much. But if you're at a desk all day and the only thing you can do is a treadmill, not a bad idea. I would just say people that feel like they have to stand, I'm not so sure it'll make a huge difference, but maybe a treadmill would. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I would say perhaps in my case, I think it is a term that it is going to be properly rated depending, or underrated if you're trying to get some sedentary lifestyles a little bit in a much better place. Sometimes people, if they have all the means and the ways to be active, then probably would be overrated. But if they have like a very long day at work or in the office, might just make it a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, let's move to the next section, which is this or that, true or false. So again, I'm going to say a statement and you will sort of give me your choice.
All right.
The first one is LDL cholesterol particles are all equal. So all impose the same health risk. True or false?
False, yeah. They're all harmful. The degree of how harmful each of them is probably different. Sorry, the car next to me just left, and so the sun's like blaring in my eyes. Whatever. Yeah, so yeah, anyway. So they're all harmful. The degree of severity of harm is different.
Okay. Slow and steady fat loss versus rapid weight loss. I know we touched about that one, but is it this or that? What would you choose if you were to choose one of these two approaches?
For someone with obesity, I would, if I could, rapid. For myself, someone who's leaner, slow.
Yep. What's worse, lack of sleep or a very sedentary lifestyle for longevity?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would say, oh man, I don't know. If I don't sleep, I feel like hell. And the quality of life is so low that I don't even care about living long. So I'm going to say lack of sleep.
Yep. High cortisol causes you to gain weight. True or false?
True in pathological levels, and that's usually seen with tumors. Subclinically elevated may have an effect, but it's not a large effect.
Do you think this term or like this comes along with like, well, if I have a high stress lifestyle, just because I have high cortisol levels, I'm gonna just naturally gain more weight?
Right.
Or is it because you tend to crave for more highly palatable foods? What is the driving cause of people gaining weight with high cholesterol?
Yeah, cortisol.
High cortisol.
So yeah, it's a chicken or the egg. I have a feeling it might be something that's just there while the underlying issue is the stress. However, there may be a small effect there, but I would say it's probably more the stress.
Okay. All processed foods lead to obesity. True or false?
I would say false.
Okay. If you have hypothyroidism, once you're diagnosed and medicated with thyroxine or the proper medication, you should be able to live like any other person. True or false?
True for the most part. Yeah.
Yep. All women with PCOS have a lower metabolic rate than non-PCOS women. True or false?
False.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, there are a few studies out there. One of the more recent studies actually looked at total daily energy expenditure. I think this should be something that's studied a little bit more closely, because the studies have been done have been small and now we're finding there's different types of phenotypes of PCOS. If I had to guess, the insulin resistant folks, and there have been a couple small studies on this, the more insulin resistant folks may have the bigger issues. I think most of the issues come from appetite regulation, though, and not metabolic rate.
All right. Well, for me, the other question now coming out of this true or false, this or that, is what are the main, for you, in your opinion, the three biggest barriers to get into a calorie deficit when it comes to weight loss for people are trying to do that?
I would say our environment, which includes our family and job, coworkers. I would say, obviously there's money. You can never get away from having the means and neighborhood and whatever surroundings. And that all kind of falls under environment. And then the next big thing is appetite. And genetically, we all have different types of appetite. The biggest genes that drive weight gain are related to our central nervous system, likely in the appetite regions. So especially when we gain a lot of weight, when we try to cut food out, appetite is an issue. So I mean, again, those are the biggest things. Like, and then the third one is the know-how. Like, some people have a good idea. Hey, I should probably not eat the donuts or cookies, and I should probably eat more fruits and vegetables, and maybe some chicken or something like that. But you know, some people just don't. They're just inundated with information. So environment, appetites, and the know-how.
I think that one is so important, especially because people think if they have to lose weight, they have to either go one extreme or the other. So if they want to lose weight, they have to go completely clean and drop all the things that they love, or like be very aggressive. And then that's why it becomes very unsustainable. And then they are not consistent with that. And then they have that ongoing struggle of losing weight.
Yep.
Well, the other question, I think this is going to be the last one for you. Thoughts on artificial sweeteners and the impact on gut microbiome? This is such a debated topic.
Yeah. Again, so outcomes over mechanisms. Outcomes, we don't see any harm in terms of things we care. Weight loss, metabolic disturbances. We don't know enough about the microbiome to know what changes are a proper clinical outcome. We don't really know. So I would say that it's just not we need to study it further. It looks like we eat all sorts of things and it has changes on our microbiome. We just don't even know. And it looks like in some studies, it looks like there's a change. In other studies, it's not very conclusive. Some of these were with animals. Honestly, it's just not something I really care about.
Yeah. I would say that this is something that we probably need to study a little bit more before we sort of get so stressed and hung up on that particular thing. Well, I think that's most of the question. The last question would be about, what is your favorite arepa? Venezuelan arepas. I know you are Pabellon. You love that one, hey? Okay, is there any future projects, anything that you're looking forward to be doing in the next month?
I'm going to launch my own like monthly exercise thing to get everybody to exercise and lift weights and stuff like that kind of jive with my style. And then I'll probably have a nutrition coaching service, and then it's a weight loss obesity telemedicine thing. So.
All right, we're looking forward to that. Spencer, has been a really pleasure to meet you, to have a chat with you.
Thank you.
And to get you on board with anyone. If you want someone to reach you, where's the best place to talk?
Instagram. I don't read all my DMs, but you can make comments and whatever.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Spencer. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.